a world where we have everything and it's still not enough, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there's more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old push your way through and claim the deeper, more meaningful life that's calling you.
That's what we invite you to explore with us.
We're your hosts,
Stephanie Allen
and Maren Stephanie. And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Yay! Hi, welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. Boy, am I ever fired up today.
Yes,
and I'm here with Maren because this is Stephanie. And I just have to tell you, because there's so much going on in the world right now. Like, am I for this? Am I against that? Where am I? I'm all over the place. And a person like myself with lots of energy, people often say, well, how do you have so much energy, Stephanie? Like, where does it come from? And for me, when I really look at it, it's been a practice. I get more energy. When I was younger, I used to get a lot of energy about fighting against stuff. Boy, did I ever feel like on top of the world. I just got to fight, go, go, go. Have lots of energy. But I got to a point in my life where my body started breaking down. I started getting injured. Even when I was working out, I would just push real hard. And I'd be fighting for, the next goal or the next achievement. And then you get to a point in my life, and that's what happened with me, is that you end up getting burnt out. And then you start to feel, why bother? I can't find time. I can't find all these things. But what I'm talking about is something that Maren and I have been talking about a lot lately too, is like, where's the best place to put your energy? Like, if you want to really make a difference and to also save your energy, is to find what is your truth.
So you're talking about like, not only like, if you are putting your energy in a place that's the best for you, it actually feeds you energy. So you get more energy out of it.
Exactly. Like, what is best for you and what is best for me could be totally different.
Completely.
And I would love to hold space for people like that, because I don't think it's not a one size fits all. And we tend to get kind of in with the tide. Like, we kind of get washed into shore with a whole bunch of things that are going on, and we get carried away instead of having that space to discern what's mine to do.
And knowing that, I love the word you used when we started. You said it's been a practice for you to learn that for yourself.
Oh, God.
And it's changed over your lifetime. Like, you used to get energy from fighting against stuff, and now you're getting more energy with, where am I moving towards? The towards energy. And that's what feeds you.
Because when I was younger, I would be that all fired up and ready to go at anything, right? Because I'm against this and I'm against that. And I would look at people my age now, and I'd say, that old person, they've given up hope. They're not fighting against anything anymore. What's wrong with them? They're just going to like lay down and die. Like, I just thought they were old. And now I'm that age, and I'm starting to look at wisdom instead of like feeling like I'm laying down. And there's a third option, and that's learning what it is you stand for. Yeah. And being able to use your energy toward that, which is true for you.
And I will say,
you're not actually fighting. Instead of, I think of the ocean. Instead of standing in the ocean and looking at the wave that's coming at you, you turn around and you look at the shore and you let the wave carry you. Sometimes that wave can be an unconscious wave, and so we just get carried away with everybody else's shoulda, woulda, coulda, ought tos. Or we stand and we go, wait a minute, this is what's important to me. I want to put my energy as if we were investing it, not spending it, but investing it into something that we want to stand into the future with. And then that wave carries you.
Yeah. And when you invest, you get something in return. When you spend, it's gone. And so when I spend my energy all day fighting, first of all, what you resist persists. Mm-hmm. So when you fight against something, you're putting energy into the something that you're actually fighting against. So it's still there, and it's spending your energy.
Oh, 100%.
And then if you invest in what the alternative is. So I'm going to use an example from when I was younger. My mom and I owned an heirloom seed company. And at the time, and still Monsanto still exists and still doing its big bad thing, right? And at the time, it was kind of newer news, right? And the heirloom seed, open pollinated seed kind of industry was just getting going. There was a brand new startup called Seed Savers Exchange, which is no longer a brand new startup and doing awesome things. And the thing about, we were fighting against the big corporations that were hybridizing seeds and taking open pollinated. So open pollinated seeds, what that means is that nature's doing her thing. She pollinates it, and it's like an open pollinated tomato. That means that whatever nature does, you get whatever comes from that, like the tomato that comes out of it, right? And then you can save those seeds and plant them next year. When the corporations hybridize something, they take the genes and they actually, well, now they take the genes. At the time, it was over generations. They were hybridizing for certain attributes. And those corporations wanted things like, they wanted tomatoes that are more shippable, that had thicker skins, that were all the same size and shape so that they could fit into the same containers. Things that worked well for large, production. And that was important because
but there was a cost to that, right? And I'm not just talking about financially, but a cost to the earth as well as to the human beings that were going to be eating them.
Correct. So one of the things that was happening is they were gobbling up these open pollinated seeds and no longer allowing them to be available to the public. So there was this outcry and this push for home gardeners to save their seeds and send them to Seed Savers Exchange and to put them away into these, they're now seed banks all over the world. God bless us, right? Because we learned. And what we were learning is that organisms that have greater diversity have better health. And there's a thing that, we could have a whole podcast just on that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Right. Because when you look at our planet, we literally have a third of the number of species on our planet that we did from 1970. We've lost 2/3 of our diversity.
Wow.
So back to our story though. So my mom and I had a choice of, we could fight against Monsanto. And there's lots of reasons to do that, right? And the other companies that were doing that. Or we could do something that was moving towards the world that we wanted to have.
That's a key right there.
Yeah.
That takes an awareness of saying, well, what kind of world do we want to live in? And do I want to put my energy to invest in that? Or do I want to spend my energy to fight against, which is tearing it down? Yeah. And I say those two words, spend and invest, like we said earlier, intentionally.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
We decided to invest, and we started an heirloom seed company called Underwood Gardens, which we've since sold, and it's still going. I love that. So you can go to underwoodgardens.com, and I get nothing for that, by the way, not associated with them at all anymore. And we were one of the first heirloom seed companies out there, open pollinated, that was selling everything we sold. There was no hybrids at all. And there is a place on the planet for hybridization and for mass production, and that's all well and good. It doesn't have to be at the expense of. And so we wanted to live in a world where both options were possible, that the little guy didn't get gobbled up by the big guy. So we helped to proliferate the little guy and the importance of biodiversity and seed saving and all of those things. And it doesn't have to be an either or. So like my mom,
I think that's what happens, isn't it?
It does.
We get, when we say the for and the against, it's like you're two oppositional sides, and who's going to win is the one who's going to trample the other one. And at what cost is that going to happen?
I hope that, I think about war. I know this is a seeming strange segue. And in the past, when we've looked at the concept of war, there was a winner and a loser. There was a reason to have war because these people would win, these people would lose, et cetera, et cetera. In today's day and age, when you look at war, there's no one that wins.
Yeah, not even the planet wins, because
we're going to
where there's been
annihilate.
wars, it annihilates even the ground beneath it, or the
And
water, or whatever.
if we get to that point where there's a huge war, we will annihilate ourselves. And so the reason I bring that up is because I'm hoping that people are starting to realize that that's true with everything, that it is no longer in our best interest to think in this either or type of way about whether it's about our own business, our own thoughts within ourselves, or, what we're doing on the planet of this person's right, that person's wrong. It's like, how is it serving and where are we going to go with it instead of they're wrong?
To me, when I start to get into that rights and wrongs and good and bad, I just get exhausted. Like, it's just like when I talk about energy in the beginning, like, who doesn't want more energy? And I remember when I was younger, I used to think, well, money is energy. That's why we call it currency. It's a current, it's a flow. And so I used to relate, if I had more money, then I would fill in the blank. I mean, good God, that's what we tend to believe. But it's like, money is just one physical form. There's so many different levels of energy. And I'm going to relate it to health in that way too, is that we tend to think of like a physical illness. Like we have the war on cancer, we have the war on diabetes, we have the war on all these different parts, instead of looking at, well, what is working? What is true and beautiful about what's already happening in my body? And what if I invested in that? Not that I'm not ignoring, the insignificant or the significant part of me that isn't really doing so great. I'm not ignoring it. Please hear me on that. I'm just looking at all the other parts that are actually doing really well. Here's an example that I love with it in the health is that, we tend to study illnesses. Like well, what went wrong? What did they do bad? What did they do correct? What did they do? Like, why is this person sick and why is this one, of a twin, and why is this one not sick? But we, for decades, we've looked at the illness instead of looking at the wellness. And now we're, starting to get more popular with the term of blue zones. And they're starting to actually look at those blue zone areas where people are living well into their, late 90s, hundreds. Yeah. And not only are they living well, they are functioning, healthy,
thriving,
mentally thriving, well into 110 years of age.
They have more energy than some 30-year-olds I know.
Exactly. And so, like, ta-da, like, why didn't we think about this earlier? But now you're moving towards something. Like you're saying, okay, I'm going to stand for longevity. And so what's going to be needed? Well, I could take medications, I could do this, or I could actually live a healthy, fulfilled, meaningful life, which actually then changes my physicality.
Yeah.
So we're talking about changing from the inside out. And that's also what you're talking in the heirloom seeds is that, Monsanto was changing the seeds so that it didn't have, those markers, and that there's a significant, there's a significant problem with that because it just doesn't replicate.
Yes. So that's the thing about a hybrid. I didn't finish. Sorry about that. A hybrid, if you save the seeds, you buy like some, hybrid variety at the garden center, and you love that tomato and you're like, oh my God, I want this tomato next year. I wonder if they'll offer it. Well, I want to save the seeds and I'll grow this tomato for myself next year. The thing about it is you won't get that tomato. You'll get a throwback to one of its ancestors, which may or may not be any good at all. Right? So you don't get with a hybrid, and this is how they keep you coming back, and you have to keep buying their plants because it's a hybrid plant. And if you love that plant, the only place you can get it is from Burpee Seeds or whatever, right? So that's the problem with hybrids, is that we are now beholden to the large corporation instead of the open pollinated, where, it's like if I go to Johnny Seeds, which is another great open pollinated seed company, and I buy one of their, awesome varieties that has lots of great reviews and I like it, I just save the seeds from that booger, plant it next year, and I have the same thing, and I never have to buy from Johnny's again. which good and bad, right?
Yeah.
I do because I want to, that's one of the things that I do. I want to support those. Again, this is my towards life. I
Right.
live a towards life. What do I want to support? So I put my money towards those things that I want to support, and I'm very intentional about it.
I love that. I mean, currently right now, and I'm going to bring this up, and I know it could be very controversial, but I think of Canada and United States. And, you know, Maren and I are
Canada and United States.
United States right now. And so, you know, the size of Canada is 42 million people. We're not very big, although we are one of the largest land masses on the planet. So when we have a very large undefended border, we're very vulnerable. And so when I look at these kind of things, and you're like, well, what are we for and what are we against? There's a lot of individuals who are against. And like I said, it's neither right or wrong or good or bad. But I know how I feel. And that's what I kind of want to look at is like, I know how I feel when I try to go against something. I feel exhausted. I feel hopeless. I feel helpless. And as a good Star Wars person that I am, I always say, you know, hope is what rebellions are built upon. Right. And so if I don't have hope, there is no toward. There is no tomorrow. So I know what is it that gives me hope is that when I can take my energy and I go toward. And what's interesting, and many of you already know this, there's been a lot of talk about tariffs from the United States for Canada, and that, you know, it's going to radically affect our economy. And we don't have the life force in Canada to fight against the United States. We just don't. So it's actually made us turn toward each other. This is really interesting. It's made us turn, we are actually becoming the United Canada. It's really interesting. For the first time in 157 years, really, we are becoming a united country provincially. It's really cool because we've had to work together. It's forcing us to actually work together. And I bring that up because whatever you fight against actually becomes stronger.
Yeah. Like I
That's
said
why you
earlier.
go to the gym and you fight against the weight and you change your muscles. They become stronger. But the thing is, if you're actually pushing against a partner or a system or a belief system, you actually make it stronger.
So if we think about it, everything is energy. And if I put my energy into that thing, whether it's fighting against it or fighting for it, I'm actually adding my energy to it, which helps to maybe understand why when you fight against something, it adds energy to it and makes it stronger.
To the very thing you actually don't want to stand for.
Right.
So the best way to invest your energy is to look at what is it that you love, you find beautiful? What is the ideal you want to live into? I mean, we can use this as partners, right? Like there's that old saying is like, do you want to be right or do you want to be intimate if you're having a fight with your loved one? And look, I can tell you how many times I've seen parents fight with their infant child. And I'm like, okay, now you're on the same level as the infant. You're fighting against an infant. It's like, not that an infant can rationalize or any of that kind of thing, but it's like, as we get older, we realize we don't have control over another person. But what we do have control is where we put our energy, where we put our time, where we put our awareness and consciousness. And because I work with so many people on a weekly basis, one-to-one, I'm seeing the radical expense of one's health. And I'm not just talking about their physical health. I'm not just talking about their mental health. I'm talking about emotional health here too. And that they're giving up hope for what could be possible. And I've said to numerous of my clients, I'm like, stop watching the news. Turn it off. And it's not about being uneducated, but people are making it a full-time diet.
Yeah.
It's like eating junk food.
Constantly.
And I said, take that time that now, once you're not on the social media and you're not on, you know, the news channels or the whatever you're reading, literally stop and go, what is it that I want? What kind of world do I want to live in? Or what kind of world do I want to leave my children and my grandchildren? That is a more energizing question And you may
Absolutely.
not have the answer. And I always say, if that's okay. If you don't have an answer, that's actually okay. Just you asking that question is giving you energy to
Yeah.
then perhaps live into it.
So here are just a couple of benefits of doing that is how often do we fall asleep, like fall into bed, not able to sleep, but absolutely exhausted with our brains just churning away?
Exactly.
And then you wake up and you need to like pour coffee down your throat to like actually wake up. What if you didn't have that happening? Like, what if you could crawl into bed and fall asleep without your brain churning and not already exhausted, but like, oh, I could actually go to sleep now. And it was a pleasant experience instead of, I have to go to sleep, right?
And I
And
have
then
to get up.
I have to get up and right. So, we just we just talked about Groundhog Day a couple podcasts ago, like that constant day in and day out of the same grind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one place where, oh, I have more energy.
Mm-hmm.
Another place is you were talking about health and our health. Well, it takes energy to heal. So if I have more energy, my cells have that available. So I get sick less and I
Mm-hmm.
am less likely to catch something that's going around. The misinformation that happens in our bodies that leads to things like cancer and diabetes and all of I'm not guaranteeing that you won't get these things. It just is when you're degraded, you're more likely to get them. When you have more energy, you're less likely to, right? So just,
Yeah. You have that internal resiliency. Like your body is
yeah,
so amazing. It knows how to overcome things. So does the planet. The planet actually knows how to overcome things. But if we are not investing in that, and I don't mean pushing against things, I mean investing in it, like imagining a new possibility, imagining, yourself being healthy, happy, and well, living into an ideal of a world, like for yourself, for those you love. Like, what does that mean? If you start to invest into that, you actually tell your brain, your neurons, your cells, it creates an internal environment for health and well-being. And
yeah.
then that changes your thought process. It changes your behavior. It changes the way you hold your body, and it changes the way you breathe.
Science is now proving that our genes are not what hold the key to our what we think of as our predetermination. Like we've heard, oh, our parents had this, so we're predetermined to have it,
Right.
whatever it is, right? And science is now proving that it's not the genes that are doing that, that it's actually beyond the genes, it's the field that does it. And the field is it's the environment. So they did an experiment. I just actually heard this yesterday. They did an experiment with a petri dish of stem cells, and they were all the same exact cells with the same exact genes, and they put them in different environments. And in different environments, they became muscles in some environments. They became soft tissue in other environments. They became, like each of them was different. And so then they had to look at that and go like, well, we would have said it was the genes that made it into an eye tissue or a muscle tissue or a foot tissue, but it's not because they were all exactly the same genes. So what was it? It was the environment
Mm-hmm.
that it was in. So everything. So go back and rewind and listen to what Stephanie just said about creating an environment, a positive, uplifting environment, because that is what is informing your cells and your genes.
It reminds me of what we often say is like, you are who you hang out with.
Mm.
But you're also who you are, what you read, what you listen to, what you invest your time and energy into. You actually become that. So if there's something like when we ask that question of like, what kind of world do you want to live into? Find those who already live into it, who are already, are examples of people that you go, I want to be like them. Like when I grow up, I want to be like that person, or
Yeah.
I want to have the resiliency or the peace that that being over there has. You may not even know them. They might be fictional even. They might even be from, years gone by, a mystic, a saint, a master. It's so important. I have a poem I heard one time, and it's a Sufi poem, I believe, and it's called Behold Beauty.
Mm.
And I'd love to read that because it touches me. And it goes like this. It says, one day in the bathhouse, a sweet smelling clay was handed to me by a loved one. And I asked, are you musk or amber? As I am intoxicated by your enchanting presence. And it replied to me, I used to be just mud, a mere nothing. But for a while, I kept the fellowship of roses, and the perfection of my companions had a divine effect on me. Otherwise, I am nothing but dust.
Mm.
And that speaks to me in the way of like, where are you putting your attention, your awareness, your
What's your
time,
diet? What's your diet?
your
And
diet?
I'm
Yeah.
not talking about your food diet. That's important. And we know how important that is,
What are you
right?
feeding on?
What are you feeding your brain? What are you feeding your heart? What's your environment? Who do you hang out with? And I say, who do you hang out with? I don't just mean like your friends and your neighbors. I'm talking about like online. What are
Well, I
you
mean, we see this.
reading?
We see this called an algorithm. So if you take somebody's computer and you happen to get on their social media page, you're going to see algorithms. You're going to see different things that are going to pop up. That, and on your own, that is giving you a good indication about where you are putting your time and your energy. It will literally feed back to you.
Yeah.
Yes, some people will say, is it listening? Is it conscious in some ways? But that's what it's trained to do.
Right.
It is. It's paying attention. So if things are popping up, especially in your feeds or in your, the advertisements, and you're going, what is that? That just annoys me. That's a pretty good indication about where you're putting your time and energy.
Mm.
I said, if you go onto my feed, it's all about my cousin calls them fluffy bunny stories. They're fluffy bunny stories and they're cats. I love cats, and great poems and poetry. And I kind of like my algorithm. I like it. It feeds me. And it's what I stand for. And so that's a great place to start, isn't it? Is to kind of like, just be an observer of your environment and what is showing up to you in your life, on your social media feeds, on the news, in your daily. What is it that's your diet? And if it's not really feeding your soul, it might be a good time to maybe consider as a possibility looking at, well, what would you want instead? And put your diet there.
Yeah. And the good news is that it changes. Like our bodies literally want to heal. So do our minds, so do our hearts. And so you can change it in a moment. And, it's like if you look around and you're not really thrilled with what you see, it's okay. Change it. And if you would like help with that, contact us because that's what we're all about, right? Yeah.
It is a deep dive into transformation, and it is so worth it.
Yeah,
so,
it is. Yeah, it
and the
is.
world needs it.
It does.
There's a time and place to be against until it's not, and then to use your wisdom and your energy wisely. What is it that you stand for? Because that old saying, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for everything.
Or anything. Yeah. So do me a favor, everyone out there. First of all, I will make sure that the poem that Stephanie read is in the show notes. So you can always find our show notes on any of your podcasting platforms. They actually have show notes there. Also, I would love to hear from you. What are you standing for? What is your towards in life? So share that with us either in our LinkedIn group, or actually our Facebook group is a little bit more active than our LinkedIn group. So if you want to join us there, share that with us. If you don't want to be on any of those social platforms, I get it. Send us an email. Send us an email. We would love to hear from you. So we will see you. Oh, as a reminder, in between our podcasts, if you'd like to get our emails, we're doing blog posts now. And we would love to get your feedback on those too. So join our email list, get our blog post, be the first ones to be know that there's a podcast that has dropped. And we will see you all actually in 2 weeks on the Soulful Leader Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.